Hello my schoolers, welcome to my school YouTube channel. My name is Emmanuel and in today's video we continue solving JAMB CBT past question in biology for the year 2005. Please don't go anywhere, stick around and we'll be right back. You're welcome back to my school YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be tackling question 26 to question 50. Now let's get down to question number 26. We have a diagram here. Of course, this is the male reproductive organ, as you can see. The question says, from the diagram above, birth control by vasectomy is achieved by severing the structure labeled what? When we talk about vasectomy, we're talking about the male sterilization. That's another name with which male sterilization is called. And vasectomy is highly effective method of birth control. Okay, so to do that, don't forget that in the testes, okay, or testicle, that is where the sperm cells are actually produced. I think let's look at a clearer diagram so that we can explain for that before we come here to pick a correct answer. So you can see here, okay, this is a clearer diagram. We have these are the testes. We have two balls usually, okay, at this scrotal sac. Okay, we have that, we call them testes or we call them testicles. Okay, that is where the sperm cells of the male are actually what? Produced. And once they are produced, they are stored and they matured at the epididymis. That is where we have here. And then it is being carried eventually by the vas deferens. Okay, the sperm cell is carried by the vas deferens eventually as it goes during sexual intercourse. Sperm is released and then it moves straight to the egg cell of the female to fertilize the egg cell. So what happens during vasectomy? You can see that the vas deferens that we have here, okay, that takes it, just this one, you can see it there, moving this way, that's it here. So it is what? It is cut off. Okay, when it is cut off and then it is, you can see this part is this, what we have a larger percentage, then it is tied this way, such that sperm that is produced here cannot move again into this point. So no matter how much sexual intercourse that the male counterpart actually has, the female will not get pregnant because the sperm cell, okay, that is supposed to be produced at the testicle, okay, there has been a cut at that particular point, and this part where it is cut is what this part is called the vas deferens, okay, that we have here. So it's the vas deferens that is actually cut off, okay, and kept for some time. Maybe it is tied down so that the sperm cell will not actually move. Let's move back to the options so that we can choose. So from this diagram now, the birth control by vasectomy is achieved by severing or cutting off the structure that is labeled, not woman figure 1, of course, that is your ureter, okay, that leads to the kidney, okay, this is the bladder, then this we have, you can have the pancreas there, we have the okay, the vas deferens. So this part, which is Roman figure 3, that was the part we just looked at in the diagram. Okay, that's your vas deferens. Okay, that is what? That is severed. It will cut off and then it's tied so that the sperm cell that is being produced from the testes will not move to that point, and then we have it moving to. So the part that will be severed is actually Roman figure 3. So if we look at the option here, the option is option C. So the correct answer is option C. Now let's move on to question number 27. Okay, we can have, that's the plumule, you can have the seedling, okay, that is undergoing the germination. We have the soil here, that's the soil level, then it is coming up above that. Of course, we call this type of germination, we call it apogee germination, the apogee. We have the apogee, we have the hypogee, okay, where the seed, okay, the seedling is actually coming up, and then you have this point, at this point, Roman figure 1. So the question says the main function of the structure labeled I is to what? The structure labeled I is cotyledons. Okay, cotyledons is the first leaf that comes out from the seedling, okay, of the plant once it goes out of that. So that's the leaf. So what this leaf does is that before the plant begins to grow, to begin to undergo photosynthesis, so this is the first leaf that is grown out. So it stores food that is needed, all the nutrient that is needed by the plant, okay, is stored in that place. Okay, it's even undergoes photosynthesis, okay, by tapping the nutrients that are needed by this. So it will store the food that is needed by this plant for the growth, pending when it goes out and then it begins to experience what we call photosynthesis. So for that time, being, it is actually the cotyledons that actually stores the food that is needed, the nutrient that is needed by this plant. Option A says store food for the young plants. Of course, that's correct. Option B says pull the young shoots above the ground. No, that's not the work of the cotyledon. Main function, yes. Option C says store water for the seedling. It's part of it because the water is also needed. But the major thing is what? Both the water and all the nutrients are referred to as what? Food. Okay? And then we say protect the young plumule. So the main function, the major function is actually to store food for the young plant. So the correct answer is option A. Question number 28. The same diagram we just looked at. Now the question says the type of germination illustrated is termed what? Okay, we have the seedling growing above the soil, okay, and that is called epigeal. Now there are two major types of germination, okay. Here we have the epigeal germination and then we have the what? Hypogeal germination. Let's look at the diagram to explain further all the terminologies that we have. So you can see here, like I said, we have two major types of germination. We have the epigeal germination and then the hypogeal germination. If you look at this, we have the seedling, okay. The cotyledon is coming above this. You can see that's the seedling. That's where we have this the seedling here, okay. We have it coming above. We call that type of germination where we have this leaf, okay, the cotyledon coming above this seedling now is called epicotyl, okay. That is not a germination. We have two types of germination, epigeal germination and hypogeal. It is epigeal if the cotyledon actually comes above, grows above the soil, okay. Then if it goes beneath, if it is underneath the ground, it is called hypogeal. So from that diagram you discover that that is what epigeal germination. But another one of the options says hypocotyl. You can see hypocotyl here. Look at the parts of the leaf of the plant leaf that is what? Grown below the what? This. Can you see that? Okay. And then if you look at this one that is epicotyl, you can see this going. This one is going above. The cotyledon is going above this. So this kind of situation we call it epicotyl. Then when this is going above the seedling, we call that hypocotyl. But the type of germination that we experience there is actually epigeal because we can see the cotyledon growing above what? The soil level. So let's go back to pick the correct answer. So the type of germination illustrated here for this, you can see it's going above the soil level is actually epigeal germination. So the correct answer is option C. Now let's move on to question number 29. This is a familiar diagram. Of course, this is the diagram of the air. We have, this is the outer part of the air. You know, we have three different parts of the air. The air is divided into three. We have the outer layer, that's the outer part, which is the part. Then we have the middle, which is this part. And then we have the inner part of the air. Okay, from the diagram above, the structure labeled I is the what? Okay, if you look at it very well, that happens to be, okay, that is 1, that is 2, that is 3. So these are what we call the ear ossicles, okay, the ear bones, the bones that are present in the ear. There are 3. We have the incus, we have the malleus, and then we have the stapes, okay. The stapes usually is the part, this part now, Roman figure 1, that is always connected or attached to the oval window. This is the oval window here, okay. So this stapes is usually connected to that part. Then we have the other part that are the incus, and then we have the malleus. Option A says incus. Incus is this part. Then we have malleus. Malleus is this part. Ama and malleus are the same thing actually, okay. So we can use them in interwovenly, okay. So ama and malleus are actually the same thing, and then we have the stapes. So the Roman figure 1, this aspect is the what? It's actually the stapes that is connected or attached to the what? Oval window. So the correct answer is option D, stapes. Now let's move on to question number 30. The same diagram of the ear, okay, mammalian here. Okay, we have a function of the part labeled II. That's true. My figure 2 is to what? Let's look at that part. Okay, that's the stapes. II, okay, this is II here. So this part is actually called, you must identify this part first. This part is called the eustachian tube. The eustachian tube. And what does it do? The eustachian tube serves the function of trying to balance. You can see that it's actually at the middle part of the air. You can see it here, okay? So it tries to balance the air pressure or equalize. Either we say balance or equalize the air pressure that is coming from outside the environment to the what? To the middle part. So this is the middle part of the air, and then the one that is coming from this outside is actually what? Balanced by this particular tube. We call it eustachian tube, okay? The function is to balance or to equalize the air pressure, okay, that is within what? the middle, and then the outside part of the air, outer part of the ear. So option A says equalize pressure, that's air pressure, on both sides of the tympanum. That is correct. Option B says conduct sound waves to the brain. No, that's not the function of the eustachian tube. Option C says help the animal maintain balance or posture. Okay, of course, we know we have two functions of the ear. We have the balancing and hearing. Okay, so this part is not for balancing. Actually, it's not to balance. Option D says transform sound waves into electric pulses. Okay, it is when it has gotten the sound has gotten to the innermost part, okay, innermost part of the ear. That is where it sends signals to the brain, and then the brain interprets it, what the sound is actually about. So among these functions that we have here, the correct answer is option A. Now we are moving on to question number 31. Which of the following is a homeostatic response in humans? Which of the following is a homeostatic response? When we talk about homeostasis, okay, of course, that's a topic that has to do with balancing, okay, regulation of the internal environment of living organisms. When we talk about internal environment, how do you feel? What happens when there is excess or when there is shortage of the hormones present in the body? For instance, when it is wet season or cold season, okay, how does the body respond to temperature? Changes in temperature, do you begin to shiver? You begin to get cold? And when it is hot, how does the body also respond? Try to balance up the heat, okay? Someone wants to go outside, maybe the room is feeling hot, goes outside, or increase the AC or the fan just to adjust the internal environment of that. So all of those ones are homeostasis, okay? The kidney is part of the organ that does that, okay? That's why we say when there is excess water in the body, okay, the kidney begins to filter, and then eventually pass out nitrogenous waste in form of what? In form of urine, because there's excess water in the body. And then when we have shortage, low amount of water in the body, then there is a response that is sent to the brain. You begin to feel thirsty, and then you say, oh, I want some water because I'm feeling thirsty. I need some water. So it is internal environment that is trying to regulate, okay, so that it can balance up and regulate the internal environment that we have there. So now that we know what homeostasis is, okay, or we call it regulation of the internal environment, option A says withdrawing the hand from a hot object. That doesn't have to be an involuntary. You put your hand or something that is sort. Of course, you remove it. That does not have anything to do with regulation, okay, of the internal, even though it has to do with it, but not directly with the option. B says the mouth getting watery when food is sighted. Yes, what food is sighted, that's involuntary, kind of, but it's not having anything to do with regulation of the internal environment. It's not that maybe the person is famished and then you feel, oh, I need food now. It's a different thing entirely from having the mouth getting watery. Option C says yawning owing to tiredness. Someone is tired, you begin to yawn. That is involuntary action, yes, actually, but not to show that what it is. But if you look at this, option D says shivering in a cold environment, okay? When the environment becomes so cold, the internal environment begins to respond and say, oh, there's cold. Then you need to get a blanket or the duvet to cover up your body because you are feeling cold. Or maybe just switch off the AC or the fan so that your body can become regularized and come back to the normal room temperature that it should be. And if it is hot, like I said earlier, so changes in temperature actually is an effect of of homeostatic response. When you are feeling cold or when you are feeling hot, okay, the internal environment, the temperature is actually regulated such that the internal environment can be balanced up, and the organs, the human, can respond and then be in that. So the correct option is option D, shivering in a cold environment. Now let's move on to question number 32. We have a diagram here. That's a chart. We have a curve here. We have about 1, 2, 3, 4. We have about 4 of them at different temperatures. We have one at 33 degrees Celsius, 24 degrees Celsius, 19 degrees Celsius, 15 degrees Celsius. Okay. And then on the y-axis, we have the number of cockroaches that are produced. We have it at from 0 to 100 to 200, 300, 400, 500. And then we have the number of breeding. Okay. That's the number of days, okay, for breeding. So that means 2 days, 4 days, 6 days, 6 days. So as the number of days are increasing, then the number of cockroaches, of course, will also be increasing. But the question says, from the diagram above, the optimal temperature for breeding cockroaches is what? So all we need to do is we look at the curve. Among all of this curve, the curve that has the highest number of what? Cockroaches that are reproduced, okay, at a particular time. If you look at this part, we have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, okay. For this point now, 15 degrees Celsius, if you look at that curve, is somewhere around 100 or above that. We have, if you look at this, for 19, it's somewhere above around 200. If you look at 33, it's maybe somewhere around 250. Then we look at 24 degree, we have about almost 500. Okay, that curve we have it at 35. So here, this is where we have the highest number of cockroaches that are that are breeded at that point, and the temperature at which that is 24 degrees Celsius. So this is the optimal temperature for what? For breeding cockroaches at this particular point. So not 15, not 19, 24, 33. So the correct answer is option C, 24 degrees Celsius. We have the same curve here, the same diagram. We have number of cockroaches here, and the question is, at which temperature will cockroaches not survive after 10 days? After 10 days, at which temperature? So all we need to do is, since here is the number of the axis for the number of days, okay, so will not survive after 10 days. So we just trace, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Here is 10, but it says after. So after 10 days is actually, this is 10, this is 12 here. So after 10 days could be 11 days. Of course, you can see this curve here at somewhere around after 10 days. So this is what we pick. So we just check out what temperature is that. That is actually at 15 degrees Celsius. Okay, so we just pick answer here. Option A say 15 degrees Celsius. So that is the correct answer is option A, 15 degrees Celsius. Now we are moving on to question number 34. We have another diagram here. We have that's the cloud atmosphere. We have this is the ground level, where we have, this is the tree, okay, that's the plant, and then we can see, of course, something moving on this way. So that's water going to the cloud, and then we have this part. This is ocean. Okay, you can see it again. The arrow going up, moving up, means that it is actually moving to the cloud. Okay. This part, and then the cloud is coming back again in form of rain. So what is happening here is what? Evaporation. The water is being evaporated to the cloud, and then it's falling back again into the ocean. So this is serving as a reservoir. It takes it up, and then evaporation was the sun, and then what happens? It comes down again as rain. Then we have at this point here, we have the ground level. Groundwater here, yes, will also be moving up to be drying up to the cloud, okay, and then we have this one also moving this way, atmosphere, and so on. So we have moisture. So the question says evaporation and transpiration are respectively represented by the components labeled what? So we can have evaporation taking place where there is water, okay, water is being moved or evaporated. It's the vapor, water vapor is migrating to the atmosphere, eventually to the cloud. And then when we talk about transpiration, we know that takes place in plants, okay. When there's excess water, the water is being is being released, okay, or is being ejected, excreted out of the plant in form of either water vapor or what we call water droplets, okay. It could be guttation or transpiration. Transpiration is just talking about what we have, the water that's moving from plants. So the question says that evaporation and transpiration are respectively represented by the components labeled. This is the ocean. This is where evaporation is taking place. That is Roman figure 1, and then transpiration takes place in plant. This is where it is, and it's going on. This is Roman figure 2. So Roman figure 1 for evaporation respectively, okay. Roman figure 1 for evaporation, and then Roman figure 2 for transpiration. So 1 and 2. So option A says 1 and 2. So the correct answer is option A, Roman figure 1 and 2. Do you know you can take practice questions on our simulated JAMB CBT past questions? All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There you'll be able to download the Myschool mobile app for your Androids and the Myschool software for your laptops and computers. Please go ahead and start practicing. Now let's move on to question number 35. The main reservoir of water in the circle is the what? We just looked at this diagram in the last question. This is cloud here. We have oceans, we have groundwater, we have atmosphere, and that option A says cloud. Yes, cloud, even though it is a temporary reservoir of water, like it can reserve water, because whatever water that goes by evaporation, by transpiration, eventually will still come down as rain. So temporarily, it can, we're told, it can reserve water for some time. So it is not saying, or it is not attributed with that that it is the main reservoir, but because it's just going to hold the water for a temporary time. Then we look at option B, says groundwater. Groundwater, we have it here. Of course, the water gets dried up once it gets to this, so this cannot hold for this. It can also hold water here. Groundwater can be here as the reservoir, but it is not the major. We have option C, saying that we have the plant. The plant, of course, you see the plant water that is coming here, they are used up. The water that is in the ground level are used by plants. They are used by organisms that are on the ground. Okay, so that water might not be reserved. We don't have a larger amount of that being reserved. Okay, so that will not be for plants. Also, whatever water that is coming in here, the roots of the plant are using it up. The one that is in excess, of course, is being what is gone back to the what, to the cloud. So it is not. While option D, which is ocean, yes, ocean is attributed with the title of being the main reservoir of water. The reason being that it constitutes, in fact, it has about 97% of all the water on the earth. Okay, so if you have a larger percentage of water that is on the earth's surface, there on the ocean, then I think that should be the main reservoir of water in the circle, not the cloud, not the groundwater, not the plant, but the ocean. So the correct answer based on that is option D, ocean. I hope you are enjoying this content. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video. Now we are moving on to question number 36. The Mambilla Plateau is a unique Nigerian biome located in where? Actually, not Plateau, not Borno, not Benue State, but Taraba State. Mambilla Plateau is a unique Nigerian biome that is located in the southeastern part of Taraba State. Okay, usually one of the largest local governments that we have in Taraba State. That is where we have this Mambilla Plateau. That is what located there. So the correct answer is option C, Taraba State. Question number 37. In Nigeria, the Guinea savanna belt borders the what? Usually we talk about the Guinea savanna belt, okay, that cuts across usually a larger part of the middle part of Nigeria. Okay, it cuts across. It's an ecological transitional zone that moves across from the south. We talk about the rainforest from the south and then cuts across to the northern part of the Sudan savanna. Okay, that is where the Guinea savanna actually belt border. It cuts across a larger part of the southern part of the rainforest. Okay, rainforest from the south, and then cuts across the Sudan savanna in the northern part. That's where we have it in Nigeria. So the correct answer here is option B, rainforest and the Sudan savanna. Rainforest from the south, and then it cuts across the Sudan savanna, which is in the northern part of Nigeria. So the correct answer is option B. Question 38. The population density of tree decks in an abandoned square farmland of side 200 meters was found to be 5 plants per meter squared. The population size of the plants on the farm is what? We have 40, 1,000, 40,000, and 200,000. Let's move on to the board so that we can solve that question. We're told that the population density was said to be 5. So I will just say, given population size, population density is equal to 5, and then we're told that we're asked to find the population size. Okay, so we can say population size, okay, which is what we have here, is actually given to be what? Question mark, unknown to us. So which means that we're also given, what were we given? We're given the land side of 200 meters. Okay, so we can say with that side, since we're given the side, we can find the area of the farmland or habitat, area of the farmland or habitat. Habitat is where the plant actually grew. Okay, is actually said to be, it's supposed to be the length times breadth. Okay, length times breadth should give us that, but since we're told that it is square, so we know that the area of a square is actually length squared. Okay, so which is equals to the length was said to be 200, so we just have length squared, of course, means length times length. Okay, in your basic math, so length is 200 multiplied by 200. So by the time we multiply that together, we have 2 times 2 is 4. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have about 40,000 meters square. That is what the area is. So now we know the density, we know the area, so we can find what population size. So we can say population size should be equal to the density, okay, which is 5 multiplied by what? The area. Because by the time you cross multiply, it will be this over 1. So 1 times that population size will be population density times area of that. So population density times area is what? 40,000. So by the time you multiply 5 by 40, that should be 200. Then we have 3 zeros here, 1, 2, 3 here. So this should be the population size of the 3-dex plant that we have there. Let's move on to the screen now. So the option here, we have 41,000, 40,000, and 200,000. So the correct answer is option D, 200,000. Now we are moving on to question number 39. Secondary succession is much faster than primary succession because what? Now, the secondary succession, primary succession is a kind of succession, ecological succession that takes place where no life has existed before. It is happening with a bare, no animal is living there, no plants living there. So it is just starting up, okay? So if it is just starting up for primary succession, you say because what? Option A says pioneer colonizers are more in number. Pioneer colonizers will be more in number in primary succession because the soil is not existing. It's not been formed yet. No primary producers are not there yet because they just want to start going up there. So it is an abandoned farmland that has been there. Nothing has happened there. So life just want to begin in that part of succession. So we call it primary succession. So in primary succession, we will have what? Pioneer colonizers will be more in number because they want to start off the environment, the community in that particular place. So, but the question says secondary succession is much faster than what? Primary succession because of this. So this cannot be the answer because this is actually attributed to what? To the what? The primary succession. So because already the soil is already existing at this point. Option B says soil is already present. Okay. At this point now, there's no soil that is present here because the environment is just going to start building. Okay, up. But in this point now, in secondary succession, it's much faster because we have soil already present there. So we can have the other organisms coming in to begin to feed on the primary succession because plants are growing up, and then we have herbivores or herbivores are coming in to eat up the plant, whether the grasshoppers, and then we have them. Then the community eventually sets up and then continues. So soil is already present there. That is the reason secondary succession is much faster than primary succession. Option C says secondary series require less nutrients. Okay, that is not true. Option D says species competition is increased. Is that the reason why we have secondary succession much faster? No, the reason we have secondary succession much faster than primary succession is because soil is already present there. So the correct answer is option B. Let's move on now to question number 40. Which of the following is used to test for the presence of lime in a soil sample? When we talk about lime, we'll be talking of oxides of carbon. It could be calcium carbonate, okay, CaCO3. So what will be used to react with it to be able to what? To test for the presence of what? Lime in that. So all we need to do is what? To get an acid. Of course, if you look at these options, this is an acid, this is an acid, there's an acid, this is what? A base, okay? But which one will we use now to react with lime? Lime is your calcium carbonate. So if you have calcium carbonate here, okay, all we need to do is to react it with HCl, hydrochloric acid. If you react with HCl, okay, we are going to have calcium chloride will be formed. Calcium chloride will be formed. Then we have H here. Of course, someone can say, oh, this is chemistry. Yes, it is science. So we have H here. Plus, okay, CO2, of course, it is carbonate, so we are going to have CO2, carbon dioxide will be formed here, then we have together with H2. Is the equation balanced? We have here, okay, here should be 2, so that we have 2 moles of hydrogen here, and then we have 2 moles of chlorine here, okay, so be here. So, the following, among all of these ones now, the one that will be used to test for the presence of lime in a soil sample is usually hydrochloric acid. So, the correct answer is option C. Let's move on to question number 41. The importance of practicing crop rotation in agriculture is to what? When we talk about practicing crop rotation, just as the name implies, rotation of the crop. So it's a practice usually that is done on the farmland where several crops, different types of crops are planted, are cultivated on the plant in a particular rhythm, okay, following a particular what? Duration. Let's say you plant yam on this farmland for a year. The second year you can, of course, it has a formula, okay? Deep-rooted crops, when you plant deep-rooted crops, you allow it. The next year you plant a forage crop, let's say like the one that is going to replenish. So all of those ones is just to replenish the soil back with the nutrient that is required, so that other plants that we planted we eventually get the fertility that is needed, the nutrient that is needed for the plants to actually grow and germinate very well. So that is the essence of crop rotation. We keep rotating. You plant a particular crop this year, the following year you plant another type of crop, the following year you plant another one. So it could be 4 years or 5 years before you come back to plant that particular crop you started with in the first year. Okay, if you studied that in agriculture, you would have known that well. So the importance of practicing crop rotation in agriculture is to maintain soil fertility. That's the major function. Option B says improve the nutritional value of the crops. Yes, you are improving the nutritional value of the crops, but something is responsible for the nutritional value of the crops. It is what? The soil having its nutrients. So it's to maintain soil fertility, it's to control soil erosion. That is not the purpose. Well, it could be part, but it's not the major function. And option D says ensure the growth of the crops. What is ensuring the growth is because of the nutrient that is present in the soil. So based on that, the correct answer is option A, maintain soil fertility. On to question number 42. The recycling method of solid waste disposal is unsuitable for what we have. Option A says organic matter, option B says glass, option D says plastic, option D says metal scraps. If you look at these metal scraps, usually you have some people will go about picking scraps of metals. They go to users and try to get, what are they doing? They want to get those things and they get them recycled back in the industry to produce more desired metallic substances. So this can be recycled. So recycling method is suitable actually for metal scraps. Option C says plastic. Yes, plastics, whether they are made from rubbers, okay, they actually can be recycled. Okay, they can be reformed into other type of products. Okay, so plastic also, recycling method is suitable for the plastic. Of course, this is a solid waste. Option C say glass. Yes, glass are also recycled. Okay, we have the broken glasses. We call them collets. Okay, collets are broken bottle glasses that are not needed, that are waste. Okay, so they are taken back to the glass producing company. Okay, where we have sand being used, we have limestone being used, we have feldspar being used, we have all manner of materials that are used with soda ash. Okay, it's also being used there. So the glass, the broken bottles that are, or glasses that are collets, are used as raw materials together with those other materials, and then they are recycled and melted in furnace to be able to produce the glass, the bottles that are used in a pharmaceutical company for packaging of drugs, the brewery industry for your drinks and all of the like. So this recycling method of this waste is also suitable. But for organic matter, because of their level of degeneration, they decompose. Okay, so a recycling method will not be suitable for that. Okay, they undergo biodegradation by microorganism works on them, so they begin to degrade. So a recycling method of this solid waste actually is not going to be suitable for that. So based on that, the correct answer is option A, organic matters. Question 43. A non-renewable alternative source of energy is what? When we talk about, we have renewable source of energy and non-renewable. Renewable source of energy usually are from natural sources, and then they are replenishable. Okay, you don't exhaust them. Once you are using them up, you have a source where they are being refueled. For instance, we have the solar energy. Okay, the solar cannot get depleted. Even though you have a solar panel, once you are using up the energy there, what happens? It keeps replenishing because we have solar, that we have the sunlight, okay, that is always there, okay, that we keep replenishing. So that is a renewable. We have the wind. Okay, let's look at the option wind generator. Wind generator definitely is renewable because wind cannot cease. Okay, if wind ceases, then human fails to live. So in as much as wind is natural, it keeps coming. Okay, so we can have the wind generator always be there. We have the solar panel, like I said earlier on. Okay, we have the sun. In as much as we have the sun there, the solar panel becomes renewable. Okay, the option C is the nuclear energy. Nuclear energy requires the atoms of a particular element. Let's say uranium, for instance, is the source. So once you keep using the uranium, once the uranium can be exhausted, okay, but it cannot be replenished. So this can be a non-renewable alternative source of energy. Okay, but option D, we have hydroelectric power. Of course, the HDP, okay, hydroelectric, IHEP, I mean hydroelectric power authority. Once we have the water present there, okay, like we have the Kanji Dam in Nigeria where the power is being is not generated. So as far as we have the water here, water level there, it keeps what? Replenishing, and it's a renewable alternative source of energy. So among this now, the non-renewable alternative source of energy is the nuclear energy. The correct answer is option C. Now let's move on to question number 44. Which of the following is the best explanation for a child who is phenotypically short and born of two tall parents? Father is tall, mother is tall, but the child is short. So what is responsible for that? So what is responsible for that is that both father and mother actually have, both the tallness, okay, and the shortness gene in them. But the one that is more expressed, that is dominant, is the tallness. That's why you see the father being tall and the mother being tall. But if you cross, you discover that there's tendency for them to have a short child. For instance, if you have, let's say we have tallness, father, shortness for the gene, that's for the father, we have tallness and this. So if you cross them, okay, for the first filial generation, you're going to have, of course, you have T and T, okay. Then we have, for this, we have T and T also. Then for this, we have what? T, T. Then for this, we have what? T and T. So you can see this is tallness, phenotypically, okay, phenotypic. This is tall. So one of the child will be tall, the second will be tall. So three of them will be tall, okay, but this is heterozygous tallness because they have what? The other trait that is what? Short, but this is recessive, this is silent. But you will see the child will be tall, this will be tall, this will be tall. But we have one that is what? That is just what? Short there. So you have one of them that is short. So it's possible that this one is the one that got the gene from what? From this father, this particular gene from the father, and then this one from the mother. So the child becomes what? Short. So it's possible for a father that is tall and the mother tall to give birth to a child that is actually short in stature. So what is responsible for that? Option A says the father possesses a gene for shortness. How about the mother? That's not correct. Option D says the mother possesses a gene for shortness. How about the father? If the father does not, if it's only the mother, there's no tendency because there has to be what? A crossing between the options. It says nature makes the child short. Of course. Well, because we have these traits here, both these genes that are here, nature, naturally. Yes, we know we have other factors. Yes, we can talk about the environment can actually determine the factor. The malnutrition can actually determine the factor of the child. Sickness also can also be a factor that can actually influence the stature of the child, okay? But we are talking about in a case where we have the child being, so apart from those other factors now, naturally now, what happens? Option D says both parents possess gene for shortness. Most likely it is that most parents, because all those other factors are just one-off. It's not something that happens on and on. But we are talking about an ideal situation. So it is that both the father and the mother must possess a gene for shortness. That's why we have it here. The one of a child will be that. So the correct answer actually is option D. Do you have any question bothering your mind at all? Please feel free to ask your question. All you need to do is to click on the link in the description below that takes you to the Myschool website. There you'll be able to ask a question and solutions will be provided within the shortest period of time. Please ask your questions. Now let's move on to question number 45. A yellow maize is crossed with a white maize and the first filial generation produced yellow maize only. Yellow maize only. The white trait is said to be what? To exhibit what? So if we have, let's assume we have YY for yellow, and then we have small letter y for maize, for white, okay? So if you cross them, you have y for the first, those are the gametes, and then we have small letter y and small letter y. So if you cross them, we are going to have, for the first filial generation, y, okay? And then we have this coming up here again with this, so this is y and y. Then we have this moving here, we have y and small letter y, then this one move here, capital Y and small letter y. So all of them for the first filial generation, all the offsprings will actually form what? A yellow what? Maize will be formed here. We have this silent here, silent here. So this Y here that is capital, that is shown, the maize is yellow. It means that this one is the dominant, okay? That is what we can see, okay? But the fact that it is yellow does not mean, does not have the gene also for being white there. So this one is also there. So we say this is what? Recessive, okay? And don't forget, this Y is what? Is your white. So you have a recessive in all of them. So Y is recessive because it is not pronounced, it is silenced. Why this one is what is actually dominant in that point. We have that. So the trait, the white trait, which is this bold letter, is what? Is actually what? Recessiveness. Recessive, not dominant. So not dominance, but recessiveness. So the correct answer is option B, recessiveness. Do you have better steps or better explanations on how the question we've solved so far? Please feel free to share with us. All you need to do is to go to the comment section, indicate the question number and the solution you wish to share with us. On to question number 46. The association or the relationship in which one member benefits and the other is relatively unaffected by the interaction is termed what? Option A says symbiosis. It's going to be a symbiotic relationship or association if the two organisms that are involved actually are benefiting from each other. We call that mutual benefit, okay? This is benefiting option, this organism and the other one, they are living together and they are both benefiting from each other, like a mutual kind of relationship, okay? Just like we have this and this. But if one is bringing and the other one is just consuming, okay, without giving the other one, and then as it's collecting from the other one, it's also what? The other one is suffering loss, okay, or is suffering harm, we say that is what? Parasitism. So we say there is parasite. The other organism is what? Is trying to inflict pain on the other one. It's benefiting and then inflicting pain. Like we have a mosquito can feed on humans, the infected one. Okay, once it feeds, it is getting blood for its nourishment, and then if it is infected, it infects the organism with the human with what? With malaria. Okay, with the vector. Okay, it's a vector that carries the organism, the plasmodium, that causes what? Malaria actually. So that is what? A parasite. So that is parasitism. But in this case, we said there is a situation in which one member benefits and the other is relatively not affected. Not that it is affected. It is not affected, but the other one is benefiting. So whether it's there or not, it doesn't feel it, but it's just benefiting from that. We call that commensalism. Commensalism is an association or relationship where two organisms are together in relationship and one benefits while the other one is not benefiting and is not suffering harm. So it is not affected. It is not just, we can have that in cases of cattle egrets. Okay, cattle egret and the cattle itself. You see cattle egret, those birds like white one that perch on the back cattle. Okay, what are they doing? They are picking up the tick, okay, that they have, the cattle has there, those insects they have there, they are picking up and they are benefiting from it. But the cattle is not, in a way, it's not suffering any harm, okay, it's not affected. So in that way we call it what? A commensalism, in a kind of relationship. And then we have mutualism, like I said, it's just like symbiosis, okay, they are benefiting both of them from each other. So the correct answer based on analysis here is option C, commensalism. Now let's move on to question number 47. When a peacock displays its colorful feathers, it is what? Peacock, okay, of course, that is the male counterpart, okay. The female counterpart is called PN, okay, just like the N. This is cock. Cock is the male, okay. PN is actually for the female. So when it begins to display its colorful feathers, you see spreading it just like that. It is just what? To attract the female counterpart and tell him, oh, I am ready for mating, okay, just for what's it called, trying to court, okay, for courtship display, okay. Oh, because it sees just like you see in humans too, lady tries to show up the dressing just to attract a male counterpart too, and then the male counterpart also vice versa. So it's also like that in animals. So the peacock, we have it also taking place in frogs, okay, in toads. They begin to croak to attract their mate, the other mate. You have the lizard, like the agama lizard, trying to display the color, okay, just to attract me for courtship display. So that is what the peacock actually does. Option A says ready for a fight. No, it is not for a fight. Option B says protecting itself from predators. No. Option C says protecting its mate from predators. And option D says courting a female. Yeah, it wants to court a female. So the correct answer is option D, courting a female. Question number 48 now. When an animal has a dark colored dorsal surface, when we say dorsal, just like the back, okay, that's the dorsal surface, and a light. So if the back, okay, is dark and then a light colored ventral surface, let's say maybe the tummy side is actually dark, okay, or the side is light in complexion, that adaptation is called non-tears, but what we call counter shading, okay. There's a kind of contrasting color. We have one part that is dark, the other part. The fishes in the water actually do that, okay, to escape the predators. Okay, they are the dark part, the darker part, those are parts will blend with what? With the environment, and then the organism, the predator might not be able to sight them on time and then identify because they are blended. So the down part, the other part is light in complexion, while the other part is what? Is darker in color. So that is what we call counter shading, like a shade, okay, of the other part. It's counter. The shades are countering themselves, like the shadow, okay, are countering themselves. So one part is dark, the other part is light color. So it's not concealment coloration, it's not color blending, it's not disruptive coloration, it is counter shading. So the correct answer is option B. We are moving on now to question number 49. The only caste in the termite colony, okay, usually we call those termites, termites social insects. Why are they social insects? They are always in large quantity. They form, different castes, okay? And when we talk about castes, okay, say the only caste in the termite colony whose members can feed themselves are the what? We have about 3 different castes, okay, of the termites. We have those ones that are the workers, okay. We have those that are soldiers, okay, and we have those that are reproductives. The reproductives are made up of the king and the queen. Their only function is just what? To reproduce, okay, young ones. That's the only function they do. Then we have the workers. The workers, it is their function to do what? To go about and begin to get food, okay, or get food for the other organisms, both for the reproductives and then for the soldiers. And the soldiers actually are the ones that defend the territory, okay. When you go to a termitarium is the house, okay, the habitat where the termites live, termitarium that is built. You see them building them like mud, going up that way. So we have them there. So when you try to break up that, it's the soldiers first that will attack you. They begin to bite you because they have mandibles that are so sharp. Let's look at the diagram of the caste of termites so we can have a better understanding. So we have, like I said, different castes. We have the reproductive. Okay, the reproductives are the queen. You can see the king. The queen is the biggest, okay, in size. Okay, this is the queen, okay, and then this is the king right beside. The king is also big, but not as big as this. This is always the biggest. Then we have, okay, we have the primary, we have the secondary queen that is just coming up, okay. By the time it becomes bigger, it becomes at this stage. So we have the winged reproductive, just like the king. Okay, that's just having, at some time they begin to shed off, they lose off these wings. Okay, so we have the soldier. Okay, we call it mandibulate word soldier because you can see their mandible. It's so sharp. It's not the same as the workers. Okay, the workers don't have that. So this one is to what? Their function is to defend the territory and then to have that. One funny thing about them is that, just like the worker, is that they are blind. They can't see, okay, but they can sense. Okay, so when someone gets into the environment, so we have the natural soldier, you have those ones that, right? That's also another form of soldier. Then we have the workers. So these are the different castes of the termites, okay, that you can have them in a termitarium. Like I said, termitarium is the habitat that is built by termites, where termites actually live in. It's just like mud that is built up like that. We see them in villages and then in farmland. So let's move on to the options so that we can suit our answer. So the only caste in the termite colony whose members can feed themselves are the workers, because they are the ones that go to get the food, okay, that will be eaten by the whole, members of the family. The caste, other caste, reproductive, the soldiers also is the caste. So the correct answer is option B, workers. Now let's move on to question number 50. An evidence of a common ancestral for fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals is the what? This actually has to do with the advancement, okay, the complexity. That's the evolutionary study of the fishes, okay. Of course, we said the fishes, usually we have the jawless fishes first, okay, move to be bony fishes. Then for bony fishes, we have the amphibians, okay, that's the tetrapods. And then from the amphibians, we have the reptiles. For reptiles, we have the birds. And the birds, eventually, we have the mammals. That is the order in which they are actually formed. So what is an evidence of a common ancestral? So the common evidence is that what we call it comparative anatomy. We have different organisms having a similarity in their early stage, okay? And in that early stage, they begin to develop, we call them gill clefts first. They begin to develop those gills, okay, and also tails at the early stage of their life. Even they were told that even newborn babies actually have it too. at the sacral, the backbone side. But with time, as they begin to turn into adults, they begin to lose out some of those features. But in their early stage, their embryo, okay, of the vertebrates actually develop that. When we talk about vertebrates, these are all vertebrates, fishes, amphibians, so they have backbones. So when we talk about tail is not the physical one you can see like in monkeys, but at the spinal cord, okay, the sacral point, at that point we have the tail. But with time, okay, as the child begins to grow or the other organism begins to grow, they begin to lose, you know, some of those features of the gill and then the tail also. So it is in the development of the gill, clefts, okay, as well as the tails by the vertebrates that shows a common ancestral ancestor, okay, or what we call the common ancestor for fishes, amphibians, and that's an evidence for the option A. Says possession of wings by birds and bats, okay. How about animals? How about mammals? Do they have wings? No. Option B says cold-bloodedness of fishes, amphibians, and reptiles. Okay. How about the mammals? Are mammals also cold-blooded? Okay. That is not correct. Option C says presence of gill cleft in vertebrate embryos. The embryo at their new stages actually have things in common, which is what? The development of the gills and the tails, okay, which is what option C, that is correct. Option D says possession of scale by fish and reptiles, okay. So how about the birds? How about the mammals? Do they have scales also? So the correct answer actually is option C. I hope you enjoyed this content because I really did solving those questions. If yes, please don't forget to click on the like button, hit the subscribe button, and finally tap on the notification bell to keep you informed once we upload our next video.